All right. So, documentation, a love letter to your future self. Are we going to move forward? There we go. Dear future me, I promise to stop leaving you cryptic notes and forgotten wikis. No more digging through old Slack threads or deciphering scripts named fix this, maybe.sh. Today, I commit to writing clear, versioned, and useful documentation because you deserve better. Join me for a journey through BBEdit, Wikis, Zendesk, and GitHub as we learn to document with love, not regret. Yours faithfully, past you. So who the hell is this guy? I am a Mac admin, obviously. Being here, I've been a consultant, still kind of do that on the side. In the past life, I've been an Apple authorized reseller and service provider. That is where my jadedness comes from. Also a managed service provider. Done a lot of technical writing in my past, and I am the co-organizer and co-podcast host for the Mac DevOps YVR conference. And speaking of Mac DevOps YVR, documentation is a love letter to future you was something that Matt said to me as we were putting things together. Basically, I was forcing Matt to document stuff for the conference. Matt is my good friend. We've run into each other in random places, not on purpose, in lots of years over the years, and he's been a really good friend. So if you're ever interested in a lovely city of Vancouver, BC, not Vancouver, Washington, the other Vancouver, please join us in Vancouver. Or at least listen to the occasional podcast. I'm told I talk very slow in person. That apparently everybody else listens to the podcast at 1.5x. So I will try not to talk too fast because I have 60-ish minutes to fill. But I think we're all cursing our past selves for doing stuff like this, right? We didn't write that really important process down. We didn't do the thing that would have helped us now in this situation. So why are we talking about documentation? Partially, I think it's because we need to talk about documentation every couple of years at this conference, and maybe one of these years we'll actually do it. Maybe. But really, I think it's about self-love, and not that type of self-love. But what we're talking about is realistic and repeatable habits. So we want to create habits in our daily tasks that will help our present selves and also our future selves, along with colleagues, friends, coworkers, because the whole goal here is really to get rid of the work that we're doing, right? We want to pass this stuff along to somebody else. I want more free time. But that all being said, please don't listen to me. You're in the wrong conference session. There are better ones out there. I never actually took a technical writing course in college. I managed to negotiate my way out of the class because I had already written 3 service manuals for Spokane County where I was working at the time. And I basically took these stacked manuals in and said, I've done this before, I don't need to take this class. And the dean said, fine, whatever to get you out of this university. Here's a form, pay the university some money, and here's your degree, get the hell out of here. So yes, degrees can be negotiated, so just fun fact. So my early days of documentation started with mostly Word docs and text documents. When I worked for Spokane County, we were working in Sun Solaris. Long live Sun Solaris. I'm old, sorry. So a lot of what we were doing was actually in text files, and if you spend some time in Unix command line, there's a lot of search tools built into that. I used a lot of that for searching through those, so it makes them pretty searchable that way. But on the Mac, there's this cool little program. It's been around for a little while called BBEdit. I like that. Had a lot of search capabilities built into it early on, and we're talking about an era of a Mac OS where it was called System 7, System 8, System 9. We didn't have Unix tools at that time, so searching in that operating system was sucked. These came with a lot of challenges that way, in that, naming things, right? Step one, name something. Crap, we're screwed. How you organize files is all part of this. So folder organization, the lack of searchability, especially if you're doing things in Word documents back then. Word 5, Microsoft Word 5 was cool and had lots of power, but you can't search through any of those documents. Solaris, like I said, was a little bit easier. So I struggled with this, but I made it work. It was just me. I was early on in my consulting career. It's just me. Yeah, I'm going to be a solopreneur forever, and it's not a problem. But as my consulting business grew, I took on an assistant, and crap, all of a sudden I need to share all of this documentation and expose this poor person to me, basically. Like, this is how my brain works. This is how I organize stuff. Yikes. So my old system of folders and text files is no longer going to work. I had been reading about wikis on this thing called the internet, and we saw a couple of first generations of that, but because I'm old, a little history. Ward Cunningham developed the first wiki called WikiWeb in 1995. Ward named it from the Hawaiian bus in Honolulu shuttle system between the airport terminals, which was called the WikiWiki shuttle. Ward had visited Honolulu, but actually worked in Portland, Oregon at the time when he did that. In 2002, MediaWiki was developed for a little site you might have heard of called Wikipedia. I hear it's very woke. And then shortly thereafter, the wiki I landed on, which is DokuWiki, was developed. And this was more geared towards documentation and what we were kind of doing as a consulting business. So that was ultimately what I ended up choosing. But like, wikis were so hot in 2007 that Leopard server shipped with a wiki. Apple shipped wiki, right? I feel bad for anybody who actually adopted that wiki, because it was a custom file format that could not be moved into any other wiki system, and they end-of-lifed it in High Sierra. So pour one out for Mac OS X server. Where was I? Oh, right, wikis. So, hey, wikis, this could work. I can host this on my own Xserve. We can connect to the VPN, because this was an era when you could have a Mac OS X server and VPN and all this other fun stuff. We burn kilowatts per hour in data centers, and they charge us a lot of money for that. But I can write and edit articles. I had access controls that I could set up on it, so ACLs. So basically, I spent a weekend and moved everything that I thought that was important into DokuWiki, linked and organized things, wrote an overview guide, more documentation, on how to use the wiki, and then pass this off to my new assistant. This is fantastic. It still had its problems. Wikis kind of lack structure, because you can just kind of will a page into existence just by saying it exists and making it a link, and then you can click on it. And it's like, do you want to create a page? Absolutely, let me create that page. So it can look like an amoeba pretty quickly. But because of how I was hosting it, and because I kind of had it behind on the network, you had to be in there. Discoverability was a little bit of an issue. Sending links, deep links into pages was okay, but like if you weren't on the VPN, you couldn't get to it. 404, blah 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 blah. So we need to write better docs. Have you ever seen a doc that says, just run this script with no explanation, and you followed it? Raise your hands. Yeah? Well, congratulations, you've joined the Pipe Grippers Union. You only live once. The worst is you go into the script that they want you to just run blindly, and there's not a single comment in there, right? So seriously, let's look at some better ways to do documentation quickly and easily without feeling like it's a burden. I do actually have these as stickers. Come find me after the fact. None for Nate, though. So even if it's only you, if you are a solo admin of one, using a style guide can be highly beneficial only just to help maintain and scale the quality of your documentation. This is one of many style guides. There's this thing called Google, I think, that you can use and search just writing style guides, preferably technical writing style guides. Otherwise, you will get medical writing style guides. There's lots of style guides out there. But I really like Microsoft's. It's been out there for a while. It's kind of the de facto standard for that, but it helps you scale the quality of your documentation. Some of what they put in there are some core principles like clarity, using plain language. And the idea behind this is if you're skimming that document, so we're all experts, right? We know what we're doing. We're just going to skim the docs real quick. If it's not very clear, it's a lot harder to do. Using an active voice, so install the profile instead of saying the profile should be installed. It's also less words that way. And then consistency. And that means that you consistently capitalize things, you use the same tense, the same terminology and structure across all of your documentation. It doesn't mean you have to be robotic. It just means that it's readable and professional. So an example of this might be if the user needs to, maybe they can attempt to open terminal and type in a necessary command. I've actually seen this in documentation. I copied this out of something I had from somebody else and put it in here. So you might rewrite that to say, open terminal, enter the following command. A little bit more to the point, succinct, and a lot more readable, in my opinion. So when I talk documentation, this exists in lots and lots of forms. It could be inline comments that are in your scripts, describing even just the pseudocode that you're thinking, like I want my script to do X, Y, and Z. Just that is helpful when you come back to that script 6 months later to try that out. README files are helpful for even internal tools, scripts, repos. Run books, which could be your step-by-step guides for recurring tasks and incidents. Internal KB articles or knowledge base articles, helpful for future you, future teammates, can onboard colleagues a lot faster if you already have some knowledge base articles and how-tos of how we do things around here. External KBs and user docs, this is probably the thing you think of when you hear documentation, right? But again, this is clear, jargon-free, step-by-step kind of thing, instructions that are geared towards your end users. And probably the biggest one here that I would guess a raise of hands, who has a disaster recovery plan? I'm impressed. That's like a third of the room. How many say, yeah, I have a disaster recovery plan, but I've tested it, never? Yep. Yeah, there you go. These are the high steps, step-by-step playbooks that we should have. We should all have. I want all of you to be able to raise your hand and say you have a disaster recovery plan next year. I'm coming back. I'm checking. I know who all of you aren't. But each type of documentation has a specific audience and a specific tone. This is not a one-size-fits-all, right? But they can all suffer from the same pitfalls as far as being vague, unclear, outdated, and that can be troublesome. So vague language could be configure it properly, check the settings. Well, what settings? My favorite is when it's check the settings and it's a screenshot and it's a like web-based documentation, and the image file for the screenshot is MIA. Thanks. Put it in text, write it down, it's okay. Could have missing context. Preconditions. What OS version are we talking about? What else do I need to do before I get to this step? You may need to run this script. Do I need to run that as admin or as root, sudo? Should I not run it as sudo? Is that, am I stepping into too dangerous territory if I do that with Brew? Brew finally warned you about doing that, but they didn't for a long time. And then just bad titles, that make it hard to search and can generally be unhelpful. So how do we fix this? I like to look at this as I'm writing it as a handoff. I want to be able to hand this documentation off to somebody new and have them be able to follow it. And a lot of times when I had interns come in and help me, I would literally give them the documentation and say, run through this. Can you repeat these steps? Did you run into a problem? If you did, let's talk about where you ran into a problem. Let's see how we can make this better. And then I find myself coming back to stuff months later and going, who wrote this? It was me. Things change. A little company that we deal with, I think it's named after a fruit, moves stuff all the damn time, right? So that command that worked last version maybe doesn't work, or maybe they changed it, or maybe they deprecated it, or maybe defaults just never got finished. I'm not bitter or angry. We can use descriptive titles like re-enrolling macOS device in MDM after erase all contents and settings. Actually, I would also put EACS, E-A-C-S, the acronym for EACS, in there because that's probably what I would search for. But that's going to, when I use a search tool, even if it's a wiki, I'm going to get to that specific documentation. If I just say re-enrolling macOS device, well, in what context am I re-enrolling it? Did I just erase it? What am I doing with that? Something else I'd like to touch on is inclusion, aka woke terminology. Graham Gilbert gave a great talk last year at MDO-IVR on building a diverse client engineering team. As part of that talk, they mentioned Airbnb's infractions.yml that they've actually made public. That's the link to it right there. I highly recommend reviewing this file. In there, it's not just the whitelist, blacklist that you really should be using allow or deny list, or master slave really should be replaced with primary or secondary, but also other things that I didn't even think about. In this case, exempted instead of grandfather, placeholder instead of dummy, annotate instead of redline. These are things that have just been built into our language that we use every day and we don't realize. So let's be a little bit more woke with our terminology as well. So let's talk about modern day documentation. I'll be honest, a wiki for a knowledge base, for a small team is a solid option. You've got everything that you need there to, access control, versioning control, searchability. It's a good solution. And I touched on this earlier, but it might be worth. But I'd like to dig into it a little bit more. And the type of documentation we'd probably talk about the most is a knowledge base or a KB. So how many of you are using ticketing systems, Zendesk, Jira, something like that? Okay, good half part of the room here. And how many of you are hand crafting artisanal responses to your tickets in that system? Right, yeah. Really, you should be responding to a link to an article that in your knowledge base that answers that question. That article doesn't exist. Take a few extra minutes. Write that article. Create that. You're going to type it into the response for the ticket. Just make the article. Take two extra minutes and make the article. It doesn't have to be polished. That's the thing about documentation. It's never finished. It's never perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. So create the article, respond with a link to it in your knowledge base. It feels like it's more work, and it is. It's a little bit more work, but you were going to write the response in the first place. And some systems actually allow you to take existing responses and turn those into knowledge base articles. There's some great plugins for Zendesk, for example, that will allow you to generate a knowledge base article out of the response for this ticket. And it basically just blindly grabs basically all the text from the ticket and throws it into a knowledge base article. But it gets you started, right? But also, this shouldn't be a graveyard of one-off articles. If you know that this is like very unique to this situation, answer it. Don't create a knowledge base article for it. But you know those questions that are like, this person asked me about this. I'm going to get this 10 more times. Make an article, because the next time you're going to be able to just plop a link to it. They're not going to read it anyway. But at least you'll have the click-through of like, did they actually click through on that? Yeah. So some other tips here. Templates really help. So a lot of knowledge bases allow you to establish a template. That'll have your title, your audience, your prerequisites, the steps that you need to do, what to do if this fails, troubleshooting, those sorts of things. That template also helps keep prompting you to make sure that you fill out all of those steps and you don't skip that as you're building the knowledge base article. But also you want to write with the reader in mind. Whether you're focusing as an internal KB article, this is towards the IT team, or it's towards the end user. But don't skip steps. Don't assume knowledge. Just because you know that you need to do X, Y, and Z before you proceed with the next step, put it in there. If you already know you're just going to skip that when you go to that, that run book or knowledge base, but put all of that extra information in there. It's not going to hurt anybody, but it's always going to help somebody. And then the other part of this, you're creating tech debt, but you need to review regularly. Otherwise, you're absolutely creating tech debt. And as if we need more things to do when a certain fruit company releases new OSs, this is also a good time to actually review our documentation, because they are moving the cheese. Things have changed. Maybe that article doesn't apply anymore or won't apply as we roll everything out 90 days from the release date. So it's good to, because you're forced now. You can't defer indefinitely. So that's a good time to review. A healthy knowledge base will actually reduce burnout. It improves onboarding, so as you bring more folks on or new folks on, their onboarding is going to be faster, and it just empowers folks to self-serve. So you might have heard DocOps or Docs as code, or using Git. And like any other critical system asset, it lives in version control. The nice thing about using Git for your docs is that it's peer-reviewed, unless you're the sole contributor to that repo, and then good luck. But generally in larger organizations, this is where you see this. But even for great open source projects like Monkey, all of those documents live in actually the wiki that's in GitHub, but that wiki is actually managed through Git commits and all that sort of thing. The other benefit of using Git and DocOps this way is that you can use CI/CD tools to automate those. So like that example from Airbnb that I gave you earlier, they can use that infractions.yml file to pre-process the text that's in that document and maybe kick it back and say, hey, we can't publish this because it has offensive language, or we're not capitalizing things the right way. Marcom doesn't like that you miscapitalized your company name, whatever the case may be. But this makes documents auditable, or audible if you read them out loud, collaborative and maintainable, just like your scripts and config files, because we're all putting those into Git too, right? Oh, come on, work with me. There we go. So quickly, 6 ways to document as you go. The history command will show you by default the last 16 commands in your command line. If you just type history, you can specify a number after that and show you those number of commands. A fun little thing I like to do is pipe stuff into PB copy, and that'll take the output and just put it in your clipboard so you can put it elsewhere, like in a document. But the fun thing about using history is that it also gives you the line numbers out of the history file. So, I mean, we can clean this up. It's pretty easy to do, but, why do that when we can do things faster with new commands? So there's another option called FC, or fix command. It's actually been around for a long, long time. But FC-ln will show you those commands without the line numbers. And you can specify, it's a little bit different. You can actually specify a range of line numbers. So what's cool about this is you can use history, figure out, oh, I don't need like all of these. I just need this section out of my history, and use FC-ln, give it the range, and then pipe that into pbcopy. And then you have all those commands without the line numbers. And as a sidebar on terminal history, if you start your command with a space, the command will still execute, but it will not be recorded by history. So this is a good thing to do if you are passing an API key in a command that you maybe don't want recorded, or you're putting a plain text password in something. Don't do that. So what we can do is, don't be shy, use a little AI. So the prompt might be something like, using the Microsoft Documentation Style Guide, please write concise documentation. The key word here is concise. Concise, because otherwise, like our buddies at ChatGPT will write you 85-page book about this 3 commands that we just came up with. Give it some context of what we're trying to do. We're trying to find the WAN, LAN, IPs, and settings, and give them the commands that we did. And it actually does a really good job. So this is like a good starting point. Is this perfect? Probably not. Do you want to edit it? Absolutely. But did you have to write all of it? Nope. Sweet. So some other things, I'm not going to go over these in detail. If we had not skipped 20 minutes, maybe. But you might consider adding some, if not all of these options to your ZSHRC file. The defaults that Apple ships with, frankly, suck. I think you get a history of about 100. So I like, disk space is cheap, right? So we can go out to, tens of thousands of commands and keep that around. I do also recommend going through and pruning your history from time to time in case you do slip that API key in there, or something that, it might be sensitive. You might want to pull that out of there, just blindly typed a password into the terminal. Nobody's done that before. So yeah, these will be in the slides. Take a picture, ask ChatGPT for them. I'm sure they're already in there somehow. The other thing we can do is use snippets. So there's a lot of great tools out there. Text Expander you've probably heard of. They've been around for a long, long time, but there's this Spanso, Raycast, Atext. What these do are great tools that you can create snippets, and they can be anything from plain text snippets to fully rich text formatted, include pictures, whatever you want to do. You can create forms in a lot of these tools, so you can, whether it's a form letter or just an email response, you can literally have drop-down menus for the responses. The cool thing about these tools, and why I bring this up, is because if you can set these up in such a way that all of these snippets get shared with your team. So, somebody creates a snippet over here, it's magically available to everybody else. And it also means that you can also edit it for everybody else. So if there's a mistake or something, or the process has changed, you can just update it. So this can be very powerful for that. Another bonus with this is that you can add autocorrection for capitalizations and acronyms to keep yourself on brand. An example of this from my recent past history is OS Query. If you didn't know, OS Query is all lowercase unless it starts the beginning of a sentence, and then the O only is capitalized in OS Query. I cannot type it that way despite years of trying to type OS Query, so I have something auto-corrected for me all the damn time. Keep a scratchpad open. I like BBEdit, which I mentioned before, but there's Obsidian, Google or Word doc works just as well. This is a nice place to just drop stuff as you're working. Keep kind of a live log of your troubleshooting steps or what you're working on. And then you can take those raw notes, move that into the knowledge base. Use a little AI if you'd like. And then, You can also, there's a lot of writing tools out there. Grammarly is probably the most popular one out there, but there's Language Tool, Pro Writing Aid. There's a handful of these out here. What's nice about these tools is you can also train them on writing style and capitalizations and things like that. And it'll auto prompt and auto correct for you. It'll correct clarity, tone, and formatting for you in real time. This just helps with consistency for your docs and knowledge bases, and having it trained in the style guide just makes life a lot easier. But like I said, good documentation is professional self-care. When you're writing docs, ask yourself, am I going to understand this in 6 months? So that comes back to defining what this is about and where we're starting. Am I going to understand this a year from now? The ultimate test for me is, could I hand this off to somebody else and have them run through this and then be successful? We all like shedding work, and this type of documentation is a great way to hand off a task to a colleague and say, good luck. Another way of quickly capturing documentation is to record your screen. There's a lot of tools out there. I asked the web for this. I got a ton of stuff back. Screen Studio, Descript, Nada, Snagit, ScreenFlow, yada, yada, yada. The idea here is you just record your screen as you're going through whatever troubleshooting steps or whatever process you're doing, and then take what you've recorded, use some of these tools to transcribe what's happened, grab some screenshots, boom, you have documentation. So you can kind of think of this as a dynamic scratch pad. And then you can walk through it and throw the movie away that you've recorded later. But it helps you quickly get to at least some documentation. Or just save the movie and say, here, watch this, good luck. Watch me fumble around. So there's a lot of tools out there. Like what you see on the screen here. I use ScreenFlow a lot. That's kind of my favorite, but it's kind of like super editing stuff. I also like CleanShot for very short snippets. The nice thing about at least what I found with these tools, and probably applies to others, is that you can also capture clicks and put little hover halos around elements that you want somebody to focus on. So this can be helpful if you're building documentation. You're click on this one thing and it's hard to describe. You can just kind of grab a little screenshot, animated GIF and put it in there. So the idea here again, record a session, pull the transcript, grab screenshots, paste it in a knowledge base, and Bob's your uncle. So a quick mention on screenshots. If you're going to use them, don't do this. Keep them tight, because this sucks, and I hate it when I'm on a Zoom call and somebody shares their ultra wide. What am I looking at? I need another ultra wide just to look at your shared screen. Keep your screenshots tight. So let's wrap up this section with a little challenge. Something you can do. You got time left. You're not tired. This hasn't been a long conference yet. Document something in out of your history. Look at something that might be an onboarding task and put that together. Build yourself a knowledge-based style summary from a solved ticket. You can do this. So let's shift gears a little bit from tools to tactics and talk about the human side of documentation. Because this isn't just a technical exercise. This is really a form of professional empathy. So I want to talk about a few real-life examples. I'm going to try and keep them short. And some culture that we can build around documentation. So I touched on this earlier, but disaster recovery plans only work if they're tested. So it's great that you wrote that disaster recovery plan, but have you tested it? The great thing about writing down all of the steps for a plugs out type, we lost power. How do we get the projector and all the recording and the countdown and everything else for this session back up and running in a timely manner? If you write those down and you actually run through them, you might find, oh, hey, we needed to do step 15. Actually, it's step 2. And that would make all of the rest of this might go away or might be easier to do. So just like restoring from a backup is more important than the actual backup, testing the recovery plan is more important than the recovery plan, but you got to write the disaster recovery plan first before you can test it. So DR plans are absolutely no bueno if you're in the middle of a disaster and you have not actually practiced them. I'll use firefighters, for example. They don't just run into burning buildings. They run into non-burning buildings to practice carrying people out of burning building, what might be a burning building before the building's on fire. Although most of them are probably pyromaniacs. I'm sorry if you're a fire person in the room, but they don't actually set the building on fire just to experience pulling somebody out of a burning building. At least I don't think so. Whatever. Anyway. So let's be honest. We've all felt the pain of missing docs. I had fun. I had some time on my hands. So, we've had that script that, you open it up and it's like fix stuff, .sh, and there's no context. There's no instructions. There's no README. And you waste 45 minutes of asking AI, like, what the hell does this script do for me? And it's like, spit out everything under the sun, but not what you're actually trying to do. These moments are frustrating, I know, because I just took on a position where I'm now managing close to 7,500 Macs and iPads with, guess how much documentation I got? Big goose egg, 0. I'm a lucky winner. I have no idea what's going on. All I know is that I get to use Meraki Systems Manager to manage all of these devices. Yeah, so feel my pain. Guess what? Guess how much documentation I have written in 3 months? A lot of documentation. And I brought on a colleague to help me, and his onboarding was 10 million times easier than mine because I said, here's all of my documentation. And he's like, this is fantastic. I've never had this much documentation for something like this. Also, Meraki sucks. I get it. Documentation sometimes feels like it's one more thing on your plate. But every time you write a document, it actually is a time saver for you. It's no different than automation. It was a toss-up between this XKCD versus the automation XKCD of the scale of you write this, but you spend more time writing that. Try not to make your docs that way, but we are hopefully investing once to benefit repeatedly. That is, unless we fail to document that script. So this is a team sport. Build a culture where people get recognized for contributing. If you're yourself, you get to you get to you get to cheer yourself on. Sorry. You broke me. So, during your retros, during your stand-ups, shout out for your colleagues that are improving the documentation, that are putting those tools together, because it's benefiting the entire team. We really need to make documentation part of our workflow. When I was at my previous employer, I got them to a point where we didn't ship a feature unless we had documentation to fully support it. It doesn't necessarily mean the documentation is 100% complete, but at least we had some framework of documentation that was shipping, no exceptions. And to that end, the other way to help maintain the quality of that is to verify the document. That's a great time. It's like, I'm going to send a ticket response. Let's make sure those steps actually work before I send it to you. Maybe update that before I ship it to you, because you absolutely don't want the response to the ticket of I followed those steps, it still doesn't work. Yeah, because you didn't actually verify that those are the right steps. So just for fun, think about documentation as a love language. Acts of service equals clean, usable instructions. Words of affirmation. Thank your teammates for good documentation, quality time, pair write or review together. A little appreciation goes a long way. I know I only gave you 3. You can read the book to find the other 2 and figure out what those are for yourself. But it does build a doc-friendly culture if you do that. So now I caught up. Sorry, went a little fast, skipped a story or 2. You're probably lucky that I did that. But we can update this love letter. I did it right this time. I left breadcrumbs, context, and instructions. I used version control. I gave myself a script name that actually makes sense. I commented my code. You're welcome. Yours faithfully, past you. So what's the takeaway here? Documentation is an act of empathy for your future self, for your team. If you do nothing else today, remember this, that it's not about perfection. It's about leaving a trail. Whether it's a scratch pad, a GitHub PR, a postmortem write-up, good documentation helps the next person and helps them the next time. And that next person might be you or Nate. Use the tools that work for you. Like I've mentioned a lot of tools out here. I don't care what you use something. Use, whatever's built into whatever platform you're on. Start small, but keep going. You don't have to overhaul your whole system today, but just do a few things as you go, and you'll leave things a little bit better and more documented than the last time you found them. So now I have 8 minutes left for your questions, comments, war stories, whatever else. The cube to the man in the back. In the back, Robert. The cube's over here. Watch your drinks. Coming at you.
Okay.
I've seen this guy throw. Hey!
Just a quick war story when talking about testing your disaster recovery plans. We had a power outage at my previous employer, and some of the passwords required to bring stuff back up were in a password manager that was also down. So that's little catch-22 situations like that.
Yeah.
Talking about tools and everything that you guys use for creating your documentation, one that I specifically love that wasn't on your list is Scribe.
Oh yeah, Scribe's great.
And we were just talking, I'm pretty sure you can also export from that directly into Confluence.
Yes. Yeah, that's the great thing. A lot of these tools that help you write documentation have great plugins and connections to get you into whatever your final KB or at least commit it to the GitHub or what have you. So yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to call these personal requests for other people writing documentation. First, please spell out acronyms. I hate finding documentation full of acronyms that never explain what the letters mean, kind of thing.
Right.
And then secondly, don't always just paste a link to something. Like either if you find a web page, turn it into a PDF and put the PDF somewhere, or copy the contents of the page because no one loves finding a dead link 3 years later or something like that. So kind of copy things you reference rather than just pasting a link, because that's also just as frustrating.
Yeah, along the same lines of like the screenshot that's now missing in the web-based document of like, set these settings. What settings?